everyone, welcome to the channel. For today's card project, I'm pulling out a few, let me see if I can go further out. There we go. A few things that I already had from Pixie Dust Designs. This is from last year, but they're still available. And this is the poppy, and it makes these really pretty poppies. And then the bouquet wrap, and then the foliage. So making a pretty floral Mother's Day card, and let's get started. So first I cut a piece of cardstock. It's Park Lane Lavender cardstock, and I'm using Catherine Pooler's Flirty Fuchsia, and I cut a 6 3/4 by 4 3/4 piece of cardstock for the background. So just kind of giving the darkened edges so that the middle is a glowy highlight. And then I took all the floral parts from the poppy die set, and I cut that out of Park Lane Pastel Yellow, and I'm using Catherine Pooler's Glitz ink to add some lowlights and shading onto all of the petals. And I will also do some Copic coloring. I don't even know if you can call it coloring. Copic line flicking on a couple spots for adding depth and dimension as well. So now I'm just using grass skirt on the lighter green, and then I'll come in with eucalyptus on the darker green, and I'm just adding shading under the flowers. And the lighter green is Concord & Ninth's parsley paper, and the darker green is Spellbinder's fern paper. I ended up cutting most of the leaves off, so that shading was a waste of time. And then here, this is from the Foliage, Pixie Dust Designs Foliage die set, and I'm just adding a little shading on the branches as well. And a lot of it gets covered, but some of it comes through. And until you build it, you don't know what it's going to look like, so I just kind of shade before building. Okay, so now I've got my Copics, and I'm using Y17 for the darker lines to add the shadows. And then I switched to Y19 to blend it out a little bit. And then for a big blending, I use Y00. And then now I'm adding the parts that I just shaded with the inks, and then the center, and that's the smaller poppy. And once the ink dries from the Copics, it's really pretty. I'm really happy with how these turned out. So now the smaller poppy only has the 3 pieces. The larger poppy has 4 or 5 pieces to it. So I put it together so I could map out where the shadows would be. And I'm doing a little extra shading on the base flower that didn't need to be. The top 3 lines I didn't need to do because it gets covered. And I figure that out a little bit later. So doing a little blending, again, it was the Y17 for the darkest, then the Y19 for a little blending, and then a Y00, same colors. So get the centers in, and then there's one part, and then that goes on to the big flower, so it covers up some of the shading that I did. And then here's a little edge petal, and then I'll come in and blend one more time, and that gets me the look I was looking for on these poppies. And please forgive my voice, I've got a cold again. So that's how they turned out. And so now we're going to assemble the bow, and the bow is part of the bouquet, what is it called? Bouquet Wrap die set. Isn't it just a darling bow? That's a perfect Christmas bow, a birthday bow. It's just a wonderful bow. And I just wanted to add a little more detail, so I had saved the parts that cut out of the bow, the darker pink, and I'm going to color it with a really bright pink from Copic, and it's an RV04. And then once it's glued into the bow, I decide it's too bright, and I use my 0 blending pen and lighten it up. So I'm adding in just a few more pieces. It just gives the bow a little pizzazz. So again, coloring with the RV04, and then off camera, I go over it with the 0 blending pen to lighten it up. And then inserting the pieces. Okay, so now I am figuring out how I want this to go. And trimming off the leaves, And I had, out of that foliage die set, I cut some pale pink fillers as well. So they turned out really cute. And it's the same pale pink I used as the base of the bow. So now we've got a cute little floral. So I'm coming in with purple tape, just taping the stems down. And then I'll glue the wrap shut. And give that a little bit to dry. And then go around and glue the flowers down so that things stay in place. And I add a leaf here and there. I think off camera I added a little bit too. You can see it in the final picture. But getting everything glued down then. So now I'm using foam tape to add the bow on. And then on the bow, I'll peel off the tape and add a little glue. So there's some wiggle room. And then just peeling off the backing. I was just looking. I really like the yellow flowers against the lavender. Okay, so now for the sentiment. So I'm using again some more of that Park Lane lavender cardstock and stamping, and I used the Mom's stamp set from Pixi Dust Design. That's the new release this month. And using Versamark ink and some gilded embossing powder, ultrafine from Brutus Monroe. So heating up the heat gun, getting it going. Look at how cute these sentiments are. So I tried to stamp on the card, and of course it double stamped, so I have to fix that. And then ink blending Flirty Fuchsia over the, sorry about that, over the sentiments, and then wiping the ink off the gold. So you can see where I stamped it, and there's just a little bit of shadow, so I couldn't emboss it. I was so mad at myself. But I knew exactly where to put the sentiments, so that was nice. And I'm just gluing down the sentiments. This is a card that I will be handing to someone. So there is a lot of dimension with the bow and everything. I probably could have popped up the sentiments, but I didn't want to. I wanted everything behind the flowers. So now I'm going to attach it to the card base, just making sure everything lines up properly. And it does. Because sometimes Patty doesn't trim straight. Nope, she sure doesn't. So we'll let that dry a second. So now these are from, this calls for confetti, and it's the antique gold pearl. And they're perfect. They match the gold on my embossing and just are the perfect finishing touch. So here is our card. It's very pretty. I like how it turned out. And this is a card that I will be handing to someone, so I will make an envelope for it, since it's not going to quite fit into a 5x7. But it's not going to need extra postage because it's a handed card. But it's really pretty. Lavender and yellow are just a perfect combination. So there's that. So the embellishments are from This Calls from Confetti, and it's the antique gold pearl embellishments. And then I used the sentiments from the Mom stamp set from Pixi Dust Designs, and that's part of the new release. And then from last year, but available, and this is probably one of my most used die sets of all the die sets, is the Foliage, because it just is a wonderful background or filler set. So I used that, the Bouquet Wrap, and the Poppy set. So thank you so much for joining me today. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.